The Nets ring in the new year in style on an absolute roll heading into 2023. 15 of their last 16 games capped the 2022 calendar year off with a 123-106 win over the Charlotte Hornets. Going to be breaking down the game, the look back for the Nets over 2022, the look ahead for 2023, all of that right after the theme music.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Brooklyn, yo. All right, welcome back to the Locked On Nets podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I am Doug Norrie, owner-operator, DFSR.com, daily fantasy sports rankings.com. If you like to type in some extra keystrokes there, I got you covered for everything you need over on DraftKings and FanDuel, putting out NBA projections for every single team every day. So go check out that at DFSR.com. I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com. Promo code Locked On. Coming at you in the first few hours here of 2023. Almost got it in after for a post-game podcast following the win over the Hornets on Saturday night. Thought about doing it, then just kind of New Year's Eve festivities got in the way. Although, frankly, if I'm just being honest with you, I've spent, sometimes it's nice doing the podcast because you can use it as an excuse for work. And when the New Year's festivities aren't living up to what you want, or maybe you're just a little tired, it's like, hey, I got to go watch the Nets here. And that's just part of the gig. And, the streamers and the noise machines and all the ball dropping and all that other stuff can kind of be put on hold. It's time to watch the Nets, baby. And they did not disappoint. This is a team that closes out 2022 on an absolute roll. They won 15, like I said in the open, they won 15 of their last 16 games. They at times have blown teams out. They now have the second best record in the entire NBA behind only the Celtics. They're 2 games behind Boston in the Eastern Conference. They're the national talking point when it comes to stories in the NBA for sure. This is a team that is sort of putting it all together, firing on all cylinders, whatever superlatives you want to use around an NBA team. This is where the Nets are right now. And while, calendar years are arbitrary timelines for sure, it's just another day, the calendar ticks over into a new year. And, in the grand scheme of things, the universe, I don't think really pays much attention to what the years are. And obviously some countries don't even recognize this as the next turnover into the year. But, where the Nets stand finishing off a 2022 just calendar year, even a few months ago, if you had said that this was going to be the case for the Nets closing out this year, I don't know if anyone would have believed you. There's just no way in some ways to have seen this coming. Now, there's ways to have seen the team be, and we'll get to the Hornets game here in a second, but there's ways to have seen the team being good. We always saw paths to the Nets being a really talented, super fun team to watch. There was always, and that's frankly, been the story of the last couple seasons is talking yourself into what you think you might be able to see on the court if everything that was there on paper could just line up for a stretch of time. And that's been a theme for the Nets over the last couple of years. And even into the beginning of this year, it maintained that level of just sort of maybe one day we'll see it. That day is not today, but, maybe off into the future. Well, I think for, to some degree, the future has come here for the Nets. This version of the team that we're seeing now, exemplified by a lot of things that we saw against, frankly, a bad Hornets team, but whatever, are encapsulate what Nets fans have been waiting for a long time now, which is a team that's really fun to root for, a team that feels like it looks like it gets along really well, a team that on the court for long stretches really clicks among, the best that you can really see in the NBA in terms of chemistry, ball movement, just overall pieces fitting together in a really fungible and even technical way. This is what we're seeing of the Nets. They close out this year in a place that I don't know if many people would have seen this version of it coming, where they're going to win this many games in a row, where they're going to, at times, just crush other teams, right? Like, look back on the schedule here. They beat the Hornets by 17. It never even really felt that close. A couple times, they kind of pull within. The Hornets make it sort of a game, but I really, at no point watching this one with the New Year, by the way, a New Year's party going on right behind me. That didn't matter. Computer out. We're watching the game. We're tweeting about it. This is how we're going to roll. You never really felt all that close. Yeah, close one against the Hawks. Beat the Cavs really easily. Beat the Bucks super easily. Crushed the Warriors. Right. These are the last 5 games for the Nets. So they have had, and there's a few close ones in there. The Kyrie buzzer beater, and kind of have to go a little toe to toe with the Pistons. But in general, this is a team that when they are rolling, when it's all firing, they're among the toughest teams in the whole NBA to play. Like, this is not a team anyone wants to see on their schedule. Other teams are going to have an incredibly difficult time matching up with the personnel the Nets have. The Nets can counter in a lot of different ways, not every single way. We haven't seen on the schedule recently the players that are probably most likely to give the Nets big problems, athletic, girthy bigs, right? The Embiids of the world, even guys like, frankly, like Steven Adams, like some guys that are big on the inside and have a lot of heft behind them. I don't know why I use Steven Adams there, but you know what I mean? Like big centers that can give them problems. But you know what? It doesn't matter. When you play 16 games and you win 15 of them in the NBA, at some point, it doesn't really matter who the competition was. Like, it does to some degree, and it matters a little bit who the competition was. But these are still NBA teams they're facing. And when you're winning games sometimes very easily, and you're just winning this many games in a row, you just have to wake up and take notice. Like, you can start throwing all the little caveats, all the little asterisks out the window with each game that goes by, with each game that the Nets look better and better in some ways. Yeah. Does the competition matter? It matters a little bit, but again, it goes away in little dribs and drabs with each game that goes by. And I think that this is, if you're from a Nets fan point of view, or from just a greater, just thinking about how the season is going here. I don't know if there definitely isn't a better way to have closed out the year, but if you're thinking about things in terms of like resolutions, you're thinking things about terms of going into 2023 and things you'd like to see from the team. I just don't know how you could be more positive than things are right now. I don't think there's just any other way. It's just been such a crazy good run. It's been so fun to watch. It's a fun team to root for. It's a fun team to, when the balls get rolled out on the court every night, this is a team you want to turn on and watch. Like, this is just not a place we've been with the Nets for years. For years, it's always been, what could be. If we could just happen, if this could just happen, if X could just happen, if Y could just happen, if player X could be on the court with player Y more, if we could just get everyone healthy, if it could just the coaching could just be marginally better. All these things that we've been waiting seasons and seasons for, is finally happening. And to close out 2022 with a win like this over the Hornets, and to just end on such a good note it's just really everything you want to see from the Nets. So I want to break down the game here. I want to talk about what they did against the Hornets. I want to talk about some, I think, still good takeaways you can take even from beating up on bad teams. There's always things you can learn about just about your squad and about how they're going to sort of attack things going forward. We'll get into that here in a second. But first, I'll tell you about our friends over at Prize Picks. Talked about them over at the beginning. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. All you're doing on Prize Picks is making entries, and you're just going more or less on the Prize Picks player projections. It's so simple. It's about as simple and easy as daily fantasy gets these days. No wrangling salaries, no trying to figure out your punt plays, your spend ups like you're doing on some of these other sites. You're just going over, you're saying, hey, Kevin Durant, 28.5 points, more or less. What do I think is going to happen for Kevin Durant? Kyrie Irving, 27.5 points. Am I going more or less? And you're not just doing it with points. You're doing it with rebounds, assists, blocks, steals. Every game, tons of players, tons of sports. It's so easy. You just put 2 to 6 players together, more or less on the Prize Picks projections, and you can win up to 25 times your money. You're not going against other sharks in the water. Just use versus those projections. NBA, NFL, MLB starting sooner than you think, folks. NHL, even PGA, men's college basketball, the list goes on and on and on. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. They're available in 30 states and Canada. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up to play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 10% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. Deposit $100. Prize Picks will give you $100. Don't forget to use the promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Ooh, big breath there. All right. Against the Hornets, this was, again, in the end, a blowout for the Nets, 123-106. Really never looked in doubt. There's some cool stats we're going to get into from this game that actually, in some ways, I think exemplify just how dangerous this team is. They took a 10-point lead in the first quarter. They were up they were up 12 at halftime. The Pistons did claw their way back into it, forced a timeout in the third quarter from the Jacques Vaughn and company. But again, this was not a game that the Nets were really ever pressed. They were able to get out of the game, as one of our favorite talking points is like, how many minutes do you have to run guys like Durant and Kyrie in order to get wins? When you're looking for a scenario where you don't have to do it and you don't have to overextend these guys, you'll always take that. Kevin Durant only plays 30 minutes in this game. Kyrie only plays 33. Obviously, they led the scoring charge for the team, but in terms of overtaxing them on just like a leverage level, or just, having to dial up and ramp up just how much they're actually being used on the court, this game felt super easy. If you can get out of a game with KD only rolling 30, Kyrie in the low 30s too, basically no one played more than 33 minutes on this team, you'll always take that. Those are always the best case scenarios for the Nets, because we're always going to watch. We're going to kind of scoreboard watch the minutes here for the rest of the season. They've gotten unbelievable health from KD. They've gotten health out of Kyrie when he's been available to play. So, take that for what it's worth. But KD has played 35 of the 36 games for the Nets this year. The minutes are still on the higher side, although luckily they are starting to tick down some on a minutes per game level. So you always love to see that. So just on a high level, where the Nets finish of having to run their superstars, we'll take the W first always, and then after the W, I think Nets fans will always like to see, hey, do we not have to overtax some of the guys that are going to matter the most for us later in the season? And this game really, really put that into focus, because they just didn't have to. The Hornets are bad, right? The Hornets are, maybe the worst team in basketball. They're 10-27. I guess they're going to give the Pistons a run for their money. Pistons are 10-29. Going forward, if every team stayed equal, I'd probably say the Hornets are better than the Pistons. The Rockets are 10-26 too. I might put the Hornets at the bottom of this group, and if they become sellers at the deadline, which they might be, they'll definitely fully tank. Regardless, this is move the deck chairs around in the Titanic. This is one of the worst three teams in all of basketball, even when LaMelo is back on the court. They didn't have Oubre in this game either, but I don't know if that's a huge needle mover, all things considered. So the Nets, they win this game easily. So there was some crazy stuff that kind of came out in this game for me, just in terms of how the Nets were beating the Hornets. So to start, you're going to get the games you get from Kyrie and KD. Kyrie drops 28, 11 for 19 from the field. KD scores 23 in his 30 minutes. He's 9 for 15 from the field. They only got to the line 6 times combined. Now, what's funny about this is at halftime of this game, the Nets had put up 61 points on the Hornets. Okay, so you're on your way to 120, where they did score 123. So the offense is rolling, but this team had only made 3 3-pointers. Well, how do you do that? It's almost impossible. It's not impossible, but it's so hard to do, to put up a really, healthy amount of points and a half and only hit 3 3-pointers in the modern NBA. How is it even possible to do that? Well, the way it's possible is that they shot at halftime of this game. They were shooting 80% from 2. 80%. That's ridiculous. 80% from 2 is I mean, unbelievable. They finished the game shooting 76% from two because they only made 13 3-pointers in this game. They shot 13 to 34 from three. They were able to turn on that part of their game in the second half. But when you are beating a team by 12 points at halftime and you've only made 3-3-pointers, I mean, look, Hornets did themselves no favors. They were worse from three. They were only 11 for 41, 27% from three. But that's because everything that wasn't a 3-pointer for the Nets was just a basket. It was just a bucket every single time. Mid-range, bucket, right? Like getting to the rim, bucket, offensive rebound, bucket. Every single thing that they did that wasn't a 3-pointer just went in. And these weren't also these crazy, weird, double bounce, kind of spin and go home kind of shots. These were like so easy for the Nets. When they are able to attack other teams and get to the rim, or if other teams aren't going to like send a lot of help for KD, send a lot of help for Kyrie, and these guys can get into their mid-range games, in addition to guys like Warren and Curry, who are, elite mid-range game guys also, this is a math problem that can work for the Nets. And it just showed in this game. When you shoot 80% from two, you're just going to win every game. It kind of doesn't matter what you do from three at that point. If you shoot 80% from two and then you shoot your regular game, from three, you're going to win games by like 30 points. Like that's just it's going to be what happens, right? Like it almost gets close to getting there in this game, but they were just a little inefficient from three in order to make it happen. But they're just able to get what they want over and over and over again with this team. And it's becoming something of a calling card or hallmark for what this team wants to do. They are fine not having to jack up a million threes. That's just fine. By the way, going into this game, they were first in 3-point shooting at 39% with guys like Durant, Irving, Curry, and was it TJ Warren? Someone else shooting under their Joe Harris shooting under their career averages from three. So they're already first in the league from 3-point range when they were taking them. And with basically 60, I think those guys accounted for something like 62% of their overall 3-pointers taken, shooting well below their averages. So when you combine that, they're probably due for a little 3-point regression on the positive side, and the fact that they can just get buckets over and over and over again from two, like this team is so dangerous. And this is what happened here against the Hornets. They were just able to get what they wanted at the rim. Kyrie's finishing at the rim. KD's finishing at the rim. Claxton had another just really solid game. They didn't need anything from Simmons. He took 2 total shots in this game, which I guess we can talk about, where we see that as a problem or a not problem. He only ends up playing 19 minutes, but they just didn't need it. If everything's just going to go in, and you're going to trade 2-pointers at an 80% clip for a game, what team is going to be able to keep pace with that? Like, you're going to need the Warriors with the Splash Brother Warriors shooting threes at the other end to be able to keep up with that, even with just moderate 3-point shooting. It's just totally ridiculous. And I think it's just something, like, especially against the bad teams that really lack much in the way of defensive, sort of a dynamic defense of scheme or even personnel, like the Hornets. We are just going to see games like this from the Nets where it is just super easy, where they're able to get to the rim, they're able to get into the mid-range. And if you're able to do those two things and be 3-level as a team, the Nets can withstand poor shooting nights from three, just because you'll just take the twos. And if you're going to hit your twos at like even 60% range from mid-range, the math is just going to win on that. And then obviously even higher at the rim. So they're, in some ways, they're like out-mathing teams when it comes to just how they can score, just trading those twos or threes, because they're just so good at every level of the game. And it's just such a strain on opposing defenses like the Hornets to be able to even handle this, because they just don't have the personnel. They don't have the personnel to bring it back the other way. They don't have the personnel to handle it on the defensive end. At a few times they tried to throw doubles at Kyrie and KD. It really just wasn't all that effective. And this is just sort of the result that you end up getting. So just a cool win. Cool to see. I wouldn't call it old school style basketball with the twos, but the way that we've seen over and over with this team, that they are able to win in a way that a lot of other teams just kind of aren't able to win in the modern NBA. If your teams are going to take a lot of twos, especially a lot of mid-range twos, most teams just won't even bother. But those teams are mostly going to lose because the math is not going to work out for them. They're not efficient enough at the rim or in the mid-range to make the math work. The Nets, as we saw against the Hornets, are one of the teams that are able to make it work. All right, we are going to get into a few more things about this game, talk a little bit about Claxton, talk a little bit about Simmons, a little bit about the defense as well. First, going to tell you about our friends over at Built Bar. Looking for a delicious treat, but don't want all the fat and calories? You got to try a Built Bar. We're into 2023, folks. We're through the holidays. I don't know about your goal. My goal is to eat a little bit or a lot of bit healthier this year. And you want to eat healthier, but sometimes you don't want to compromise the taste. You don't want to just compromise the tons of time that it might take to put together huge meals that are going to be healthy for you and taste good. Then you got to go with Built. With Built, its health is actually tasty. It's really so delicious, and they're good for you. You're actually probably not going to believe it. For starters, are covered in 100% chocolate, totally chocolate, which is not the thing you usually want to hear or can hear when it comes to health. But this is what Built Bar figured out, that they can actually combine the two things, thread that health needle, and make it all work. They taste like a candy bar while always maintaining some pretty amazing health stat macros. Only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 17 grams of protein. You just go grab a box. They have all the different styles and flavors that you can ever want. Built Bar has just figured this stuff out. You go to built.com, you grab a 4-box of the cookies and cream, the double chocolate, or the coconut puffs. You will thank us later. Just go to built.com. All right, let's close this thing out talking a little bit about the defense here. So we had Matt Issa on talking a little bit about, or a lot of bit about Claxton, and then just the Nets in general, about where they sort of stood defensively. We already know that this team has made massive defensive strides when it comes to just being able to lock up opponents. Their switch everything scheme against certain groups, like this group, the Hornets group is a good example of it. They are going to cause that team all kinds of problems because they don't have the personnel to really be able to attack the Nets in a way that's going to make it really that hard for Brooklyn. And when you have a team like the Hornets, with LaMelo Ball running the offense, with Terry Rozier out there, when you have a guy like Mason Plumlee that's going to play in the post but not really be able to stretch you or really take advantage in any meaningful way, you are going to see sort of what happened with the Nets against Charlotte on Saturday night as something that's very, very repeatable. So what we saw from the Nets defensively in this game, obviously they're still continuing to switch everything. We saw Simmons picking up LaMelo. We saw Claxton get switched onto him at times, get switched onto the guards. There were so many possessions in this game, so many, where the Hornets clearly wanted one of their two ball handlers to be able to try to get into the lane, either LaMelo or Rozier, try to get into the lane against one of those switch bigs, or like Simmons, if you want to call Simmons a switch big. He's not really. He's like a point of attack defender, but whatever. And there were so many times where these possessions would start, and even it happened with Durant too. These possessions would start. It was clear they got like some kind of matchup that either they just ended up with the Hornets, they just ended up with, or maybe thought they had some kind of advantage on. They would start a drive into the lane, and it would just literally go nowhere. Claxton, Durant, Simmons would just be in front the entire time. There'd be a single or an initial move that wouldn't work. There'd be another move that wouldn't work. They get kind of closer to the rim, but it was just a sea of arms or just a really good defender in their way, and they'd have to at that point like reset the offense and kind of bring it back out. This is why we saw, if you were watching the game, you saw a lot of just sort of late shot clock threes from LaMelo, from Rozier. PJ Washington got some up as well. There was just like these end of shot clock threes that you'll take every single time if you're the Nets, right? Like, yeah, and the shot clock threes, like a little bit, foul line extended or something like that, with a defender already closed out on you, and you're just kind of heaving it up. Yeah, we'll take that every single time. A lot of that was the byproduct of just literally having nowhere to go against the defense. Like, if you go back and watch some of these possessions for the Hornets, it's hilarious. Like, these guys, every time they think something's good's going to happen, all they're seeing in front of them is some guy with a 7-foot wingspan who is super athletic, a la Simmons, a la Claxton, a la Durant. You'd have got into this as well. I mean, even TJ Warren was in on the mix. They're just all of a sudden you think something's going to happen and it's just over. And now there's 4 seconds left in the shot clock, and you're trying to figure out what to do, because the initial action against one of these defenders was just a road to nowhere. Total road to nowhere. It's awesome to watch. Now, other teams will be able to take advantage of this. Other teams will probably hunt Kyrie out a little bit more. The Hornets just aren't very good, so they're not going to do it. They too many times tried to just take this thing into the teeth of some of the best Nets defenders. Again, we'll take it. It's not a complaint, but it happened over and over again, and it just was hilarious to watch. And it just exemplifies when the Nets are when you're playing into the Nets switching game, or you're thinking that you're going to get your guards into like positive matchups against some of the guys along the Nets back line. Excuse me. It's just not going to work. Like, you're going to need first of all, the Hornets don't have the personnel for sure to do it, but few teams do. Few teams that are going to be guard heavy or just like athleticism heavy along the wings. If that's going to be your mode to try to beat the Nets, where you're not hunting out Kyrie on a switch, forget it. Like, what's going to happen? This is going to be a really, really hard road for you to try to figure out. And this game really showed it. Now, on the defensive end, from a stat perspective, Claxton again was just an absolute god. 6 blocks in this game plus a steal. He ends up with 14 points and 6 rebounds. He just looks better every single day. It's awesome to watch. We can't rave about this guy enough. It's not the only thing that's happened here for the Nets in terms of the cool stories, but not to reiterate the whole podcast that we did with Matt Issa the other day, which I would really, really encourage you to go back and listen to if you haven't listened, because it's a really cool look into Claxton and sort of what he brings to the team. But if he's going to be in just switch mode defender where the guards can't get by, and then he's going to be just cleaning up everything at the glass too, and he had some ridiculous blocks in this game, like just ball at the top of the arc, or excuse me, the top of the shot kind of blocks, just some weak side blocks. If he's just going to be like this, then the Nets are going to make it impossible for some of these other teams. Claxton is now second in the NBA at 82 blocks. It's basically just him and Brook Lopez. Lopez has 89 blocks on the season. It's those two guys in the block category, and then there's a massive, massive drop off to the next guy. The next two guys it's Lopez at Brolo at 89, Claxton at 82, and then the next closest guys are Walker Kessler and Miles Turner at 66 each. So 16 behind Claxton right now. So, there would need to be some kind of injury or, something to happen for those guys to start catching him. I guess I could see Jaren Jackson making a move, because Jaren Jackson, just when he gets to play minutes, he's at 60 right now, having played not close to the entire season. I could see him like making some kind of run up into that. But for the most part, it's just a 2-man race in terms of blocks. And if you're going to play into the Nets' hands with what they want to do defensively against you, try to take your guards into these guys, try to just penetrate into a lane that doesn't have a lot of girth, but has tons of length. It's just going to be a sea of arms. There's going to be no room to operate. If you try to get a shot up at the rim, there's a very good chance it's going to get blocked or at least altered by either Claxton, Durant, Simmons, whatever they have waiting there. It was just awesome to watch. So sometimes you kind of miss that stuff on the on the defensive end when it's rolling for your team, because, it's just more fun to watch offensive stuff. I would encourage you to continue to watch this stuff with the way the Nets are playing these defensive possessions, because especially the ones that start and just never get anywhere. Those are the most fun ones to watch. It's just so fun to watch a team that just doesn't have just any kind of dynamic guard play try to figure this out against this team. And because it's a road to nowhere. And the Hornets game was another example. Spurs might be another game with this. If it's like Trey Jones, Devin Vassal's been hurt, so we'll see if he ends up coming back. But the Spurs game that's happening probably, the night when you listen to this, if you're listening to this on Monday, could be another example of the Nets putting their best foot forward in terms of how they want to roll with their personnel. So another good game defensively. Obviously, the offensive end we talked about. Nets are a team that are completely rolling right now. 15 of their last 16 games, 11 in a row. Just in case you're wondering too, all-time record, 33 wins in a row. Not there yet. Not there into the discussion yet. Third of the way there. 1/3 of the way to the all-time record when it comes to most regular season wins in a row. Say that mostly tongue in cheek. Okay, gonna get out of here. Happy New Year to everybody. Much appreciated everyone that's jumped on and supported us on the podcast through 2022 and obviously 2023 as we go in as well. We had a goal for 4,000 YouTube subscribers we said Christmas and New Year. We crushed that. We were easily there by Christmas. So thank you for everyone that jumped in there. We're headed to 5,000 now. So that's the new goal, 5,000 YouTube subscribers. Let's get there by the end of January. Let's bring in New Year right. Make sure you subscribe over on Locked On Nets YouTube. Adam is the one with the quotes. Always get to this part of the episode, forgetting that Adam wants to look up the quotes from some of the great American poets. I'll get to this point and always forget. So I will just say that I'll leave the quotes to Adam, and we'll be back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.